What happens when a so-called fat guy steps in and completely dominates a ripped fighter? In the world of MMA, most people assume the more ripped and muscular fighter has the upper hand. But time and time again, we've seen bigger, heavier guys prove that raw power, technique, and strategy can sometimes outweigh pure muscle. Today we're looking at the craziest moments when fat guys completely destroyed shredded MMA fighters, proving that looks don't always win fights. We'll relive legendary upsets where size trumped aesthetics, and fighters who weren't chiseled like Greek gods walked away with their hands raised. Stick around because the final fight on this list will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about MMA. In the world of MMA, many assume that a shredded, muscular fighter has the advantage. After all, lean muscle often suggests superior strength, endurance, and athleticism. But time and time again, we've seen fighters who don't fit the traditional mold rise to the occasion and prove that skill, power, and experience can matter more than a six-pack. Fighters with larger frames, unexpected agility, and devastating knockout power have repeatedly silenced critics by taking down their seemingly more athletic opponents. Take Roy Big Country Nelson, for example. With his signature belly and relentless knockout power, he proved that technique and raw strength often outweigh appearances. Nelson's overhand right was a weapon feared by even the most chiseled opponents, including Dave Herman, who was floored in less than a minute despite looking far more physically imposing. Nelson's career is proof that a powerful punch and fight IQ are just as important, if not more, than a ripped physique. Justin Tafa is another example of a fighter who defies expectations. Despite his heavier build, he delivered one of the most brutal knockouts in UFC history against Austin Lane, shutting down any idea that muscle alone determines fighting ability. Tafa's ability to read his opponent and land the perfect shot in an instant showcased the importance of timing and precision over raw athleticism. Then there's Mike Russo, a fighter largely overlooked because of his unassuming frame. Up against Todd Duffy, an explosive powerhouse with a sculpted physique, Russo was expected to lose badly. For most of the fight, it seemed that prediction would hold true, until Russo landed a single punch that turned the tables and knocked Duffy out cold. That moment solidified the idea that a fight isn't won by looks, but by skill, resilience, and the ability to seize an opportunity. Even at the highest levels, this trend continues. Fighters like Ben Rothwell and Mark Hunt have proven that body type doesn't define ability. Hunt, in particular, has built a legendary career with his walk-off knockouts, taking down opponents who looked far more physically intimidating. His fight against Chike Congo, a well-conditioned and highly athletic heavyweight, ended in a stunning KO, reinforcing the fact that sheer power and experience can override physical aesthetics. One of the biggest advantages a heavier fighter has is weight distribution and power. A fighter carrying more mass can use their size to wear down an opponent, leaning on them in the clinch, smothering them on the ground, and making it difficult for their opponent to generate power in exchanges. A muscular fighter might start strong, but carrying all that muscle requires oxygen, and once fatigue sets in, a heavier opponent who knows how to control the pace can take over. Durability is another key factor. Fighters with more body mass often have greater resistance to strikes. A sculpted fighter might be faster and more explosive, but if they can't put their opponent away early, they risk dealing with an opponent who can absorb their best shots and keep coming forward. Some of the most durable fighters in MMA history have had heavier builds, proving that carrying extra weight doesn't mean a lack of toughness. In many cases, it enhances it. Additionally, knockout power isn't solely determined by muscle definition. Heavier fighters, especially those who rely on technique rather than aesthetics, have proven that one well-placed shot is all it takes to end a fight. A single counterpunch or heavy overhand can send even the most conditioned athlete crashing to the mat. A muscular physique might help with explosive movements, but if a heavier fighter knows how to generate force efficiently, They can deliver devastating strikes without needing to rely on speed. Another overlooked advantage is the element of surprise. Many fighters, analysts, and even fans underestimate heavier opponents, assuming that the more conditioned athlete will always come out on top. This often leads to overconfidence, which can be a fatal mistake in the fight game. Fighters who look slower or less athletic have caught their opponents off guard, using smart game plans and unexpected explosiveness to change the course of a fight in an instant. That's not to say that being heavier automatically guarantees success. A larger fighter who lacks skill, conditioning, or fight IQ will struggle against a well-trained, disciplined opponent. But in many cases, when weight is used correctly, whether for striking power, grappling control, or endurance management, it can be an equalizer against fighters who appear to have the ideal MMA body. Heavier fighters may not always look the part, but they have repeatedly shown that they can dismantle ripped, muscular opponents in the cage. While raw strength and athleticism are valuable, MMA is a sport of skill, timing, and fight IQ. Bigger fighters who understand how to use their body effectively can often turn a perceived disadvantage into their greatest weapon. One major factor in their success is fight experience and adaptability. Many of these fighters have been in wars inside the octagon, gaining a deep understanding of how to conserve energy, withstand early aggression, and capitalize on openings. A ripped opponent might come in with an explosive game plan, throwing powerful combinations early on. However, a seasoned, heavier fighter knows how to weather the storm, forcing their opponent into deep waters where fatigue and frustration set in. Once that happens, the fight momentum shifts, and the bigger fighter takes control. Strategic pacing is another tool they use effectively. Unlike their shredded opponents, who often rely on bursts of speed and power, heavier fighters tend to fight at a steady, calculated pace. They don't rush exchanges or waste unnecessary energy throwing wild strikes. Instead, they pick their shots carefully, waiting for the right moment to counter or impose their physicality. This approach often forces the more muscular fighter to fight at an uncomfortable pace, draining their stamina and reducing their effectiveness as the fight goes on. Grappling dominance also plays a huge role. Many heavier fighters excel in wrestling, clinch control, and ground fighting, areas where sheer size becomes a major advantage. When they get their shredded opponents into a clinch or against the cage, they can use their weight to smother and exhaust them. If the fight goes to the ground, a muscular opponent often struggles under the pressure of a much heavier fighter. Strength may help in short bursts, but over time, the bigger fighter's ability to control positions and apply pressure proves overwhelming. And there you have it, proof that in MMA, looks can be deceiving. Time and time again, we've seen heavier fighters step into the octagon and shock the world, taking down opponents who looked stronger, faster, and more athletic. Whether it's a perfectly timed knockout, superior fight IQ, or just sheer toughness, these fighters remind us that skill beats appearance every time. At the end of the day, fighting isn't about who has the best physique. It's about heart, strategy, and knowing how to win when it matters most. Some of the greatest moments in MMA history have come from these unexpected victories, and if we've learned anything, it's that you should never judge a fighter just by the way they look. But who will be the next underdog to prove the doubters wrong? The fight game is always full of surprises, and we can't wait to see who steps up next. Make sure to stay tuned, because in MMA, anything can happen, and the next shocking moment could be just around the corner.